What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the GASOCAST. Officially a new season. So we're on to season 5, episode 1. And the reason it's a new season is because we have finally finished high school basketball season. I won't say finally because it ended with fireworks, but we are on the grassroots season, which means we're on the GASO season. You got the C crew today, unfortunately. Me, Michael Timmons, IFM Hoopers, and Gaso Linden. So bear with us. We're going to talk all state. We were at state together watching all the games. And we're going to kind of preview the Gaso season. Shots AI, the first ever smart highlight creator. Whether you're an athlete, proud parent, coach, or organization, Clutch Shots AI makes creating pro quality sports highlights fast, easy, and in seconds. All optimized for social media. Say goodbye to hours of editing and hello to instant eye-catching highlights. Ready to elevate your game? Download the Clutch Shots AI app today and revolutionize your highlights with a 2-week free trial. That's the first time I've stuttered on one of the ad reads. Excited about Clutch Shots actually this weekend. They have some fun stuff in the works for our King of the Court. So I'm excited for that. Some housekeeping. The Gaso Fast Break. Lyndon, will you be wrapping a bow on all the state coverage there? I guess we.
Yeah, no doubt. We got a lot of stuff coming, some more in-depth stuff on some of the MVPs, some game tidbits and notes, and some of the guys, some of the unsung heroes who elevated their stock, even if they didn't make an all-tournament team or get an MVP or even win the state title. But there was a lot of good basketball players that we saw, so we'll have a lot of coverage from that in this week's Fast Break.
Yeah, and we'll get into this more, but the Gaso schedule has been out. Follow our socials. It's pinned on X and it's pinned on Instagram. But just make sure you're asking, like, as your teams are forming, make sure you're asking your coaches, hey, are we playing in Gaso? We've covered Gaso. We've covered high school all year long. That means we've covered you, and we're ready to continue to do it on the grassroots side of things. And as always, follow us on X and Instagram. I'm IFM Hoopers everywhere, Gaso Linden as well. So, yeah, let's get into it. We just talked about Gaso. So really quickly before we talk about the state tournament, Lyndon, give the viewers a pitch for why they should play in Gaso.
Yeah, I mean, we're the most familiar with your game. We know you, like we said, my personal number for teams I watched in the high school season is somewhere around 250. Mass was like 200. If you'd have filled out the sheet, I think you'd be right around 200, Michael. So, like we know the teams, we know the names, we're familiar with your game, and we advocate for you for every level, whether you're a high major who's going to get the blue blood sniffing around, or if you're somebody who wants to go play D3 and just get your school taken care of. We're going to advocate for your game, because if you play at a Gaso, we're going to be there. We're going to watch your games. We're going to know the context. We're going to know the level of ball that we think you can go play, and we're going to advocate for you to those coaches.
Yeah, to follow up on that, it's pretty simple. Your name just means more at Gaso. We talk about that we've covered you in the high school season, and a lot of times what ends up happening is you may be the guy on your high school team, but then all of a sudden you go into a high level grassroots program and you may be the third or fourth option. Well, guess what? We know who you are. We love your game, and we're still going to advocate for you. Doesn't matter if you're the third, fourth, fifth option. Shoot, some of these high level shoe teams, their seventh, eighth, nine man on those teams are starting and they're dudes on the varsity level. So those are the guys we get just as excited. And I'll say this, we're not saying, hey, playing Gaso and nothing else. Like, go to the circuits, play high level competition there as well. But just remember that your name does mean more. We got rosters in all week as we prepare for King of the Court, and we're like, oh yeah, I know that guy and that guy, that guy. So it helps us match make. So we're going into every event and seeing these rosters, getting excited about who we want to get eyes on. Where you're gonna go to these circuits and you may be playing out of state and on a national level, but these national guys don't know all the regional guys we know. So play in Gasos, get your name built up, get that momentum going for you, and then go put on these circuits, because that's, when you go play on these shoe circuits, we want to see Texas at the top of the stands. So go do that. But yeah, try to get in some Gasos. It'll only benefit you. We're not too loud about this too often. Maybe it's just me. I'm being a host today, so I get to talk a little bit, talk my talk a little bit. But yeah, the proof's there. So, Lyndon, you and I headed down to San Antonio along with Tim Littlefield and got to see the state tournament in a new setting. What were your thoughts going in, and then what were your thoughts leaving the state tournament?
Yeah, going in, I was dubious. Let's just call it for what it is. Just with the new format, not having your traditional semifinal games going in with starting the 8:30 a.m. games and playing semifinals for the first 2 days, and then having 6 state champions on Saturday. But all in all, especially in the big school, I was impressed with the product. I feel like the Alamo Dome was pretty full, and you're not starting at 8:30 a.m. for some of these games. If you're somebody at Perrin-Witt or Kennedale, you drive down for a 1 o'clock or a 5 o'clock game. You don't have to get a hotel or anything like that. I'm sure 3A level, there's not a lot of prospects that are just growing on trees out there. But Kuntz is a team that we've circled and we've had our eye on for a while because you've got Zach, got Mason Donald, you've got Cordell Lowe in the 2027 class. And Zach Sells, like this kid, I can't say enough about how he competes. He's proven himself as a shot maker, as a point guard. And defensively, he may be up there with the best in the state in terms of on-ball defenders because he just flies around. He had 4 steals in the first quarter to really set the tone of Paradise, really talented, really solid team, but you're going to have to earn this one over me. And they weren't able to because he was able to just fly around. Mason Donald hit a ton of huge shots. I think they combined for 51 points between the two of them, outscoring Paradise. And so, this Kuntz team was number one for a reason, and defended that reputation and ended it with a championship in 382.
So now I walk into the building. 1 o'clock tip, Tatum Columbus. Now, realistically, I don't watch a lot of the small ball at the Alamo Dome. And I mean 3A, but I walk in, I don't know what I was expecting, but Tatum's crowd, I was like, what is this? 5 minutes before tip, they're rocking. Columbus's crowd's there. Just walked in and I felt like, okay, state's here. And it was a great atmosphere to walk into. But yeah, this was the first game we got to sit together and watch. And go ahead and give me your thoughts on this game, and I'll give some of my feedback.
Yeah, and Tatum, their one loss in the past 3.5 months was to Kuntz in a 1-point game over the Christmas break. So we knew that this Tatum team was going to be right up there in 3AD1. I didn't expect them to win by this margin, but when you have Luke Sigler and Ja'Cory Bradley both getting 26 points, and just that they came out with, they were everywhere. They were in passing lanes. They weren't allowing Grayson Rigdon to snowbird and get anything easy to get him rolling. I mean, he still had 31 points, but that was after they'd opened up a 20-point lead in the first quarter. They were able to, keep them at arm's length and then even further throughout the entire game because they were just so active, so physical, and in transition, these two kids can fly.
And what I'll say, like the first thing seeing that game is you can tell, like I know that Tatum started off hot, but Columbus missed a lot of chippies early, and you almost just wonder if those go, and you just wonder how that confidence to get yourself into the game. I don't think Columbus ever fully got themselves into that game, and they had some opportunities early because I know Tatum started hot, but they missed some easy ones as well. And you just wonder if, late in that first quarter, if it's a more competitive game, who knows what could happen. But yeah, Tatum really, I mean, their crowd could feel it. Every time they'd go on a run, like you just feel that momentum. And that's the one thing I know about a huge crowd is like you can hear and feel that energy like it's a 6-0 run. And you're like, that energy's coming. Columbus, they're going to call a timeout. You just feel that. And so great for Tatum to get that huge win. But yeah, Ja'Cory Bradley set that tone for sure. Because we're sitting there at the media table and we're like, who do you think is going to win MVP? But Luke Sigler down the stretch also was big time.
Yeah.
Hold on. Okay. We just lost people on Tech Soups Gasso, but follow. I think you and I are on our personal ones on X. So Gasso, Linden, iFilm Hoopers. But we'll keep the party rolling. Moving on to the 4A side of things. Once again, I don't know what I was going to expect, but Kennedale fans, Wheatley fans, this game was awesome. Talk about your thoughts on it. Yep.
I think this was my favorite game of the weekend. In terms of you had both crowds rolling deep. in the Alamo Dome. It got loud, or as loud as it can get in the Alamo Dome, just because that place is so big. The acoustics are so weird in there. But you know, with Quentin Sanders and his scoring, which has been electric all postseason, you knew it was going to take something special from Kennedale to knock them off. But we got that with Trey Smith's play. Are you kidding me? 22 points, 10 steals, a double-double with 10 steals in the state championship game. That's crazy impressive.
No, facts.
And he came up with them in big moments, was able to finish the game late. And then when you talk about Jacoby Lovings and his, just microwave scoring ability, he didn't have his best game, but he came up big. He had that and one down the stretch, which was a huge play. Kennedale was just too tough, too rugged down the stretch. They didn't give Wheatley anything cheap at the end, and we're able to see out the game.
I thought that this game was evenly matched enough where I knew Trey Smith and Jacoby Lovings had to be good, but I didn't think they had to be good at the same exact time for them to get the win. So you see a guy like Trey Smith, which is another narrative. Who's the leader on the court that's going to get you into games and get you started? And then that second half, Jacoby Lovins had some big shots. The and one, like you said, just to take that game over, but it was still a back and forth game. And once again, we see so many individual possessions in these games. So you're like we'll be watching and be like, that missed layup was huge. That's going to come back. Or that play was huge. Like, great to see a role player hit a shot. So you see that in a 4-point game. Like, there's huge plays being made at every second of these state games with small margins. But yeah, that was one of my favorite games as well. I don't know if I'm going to make it my favorite. But at that point after that game, I was like, I don't know if there's going to be a better game than that. So then we get the nightcap Friday night. Dallas Kimball, who knows how to get to state, versus Houston Washington, who also knows how to get to state. I was excited for this one, and you could tell that a lot of fans just watching Dallas Kimball, if they hadn't seen him before, just watching. I won't even call it layup lines anymore. It's dunk lines. Talk about your thoughts on how this game went.
Yeah, and especially early, I liked Washington's game plan to kind of go inside, get Samuel Johnson going, try to get that big to big, and then let their guards make shots from behind that. And it worked. They were down 1 point going into the second quarter, but then you start missing a few of those shots, long rebounds, and we know what Kimball can do in transition, and it turned into a dunk fest. I mean, they had 15 or 16, I can't remember which number it is, but 15 or 16 dunks in this game. I mean, Lance Carr was above the rim the entire game. Mari Wesley, anytime he got on the out in transition, he was dunking it. And then even though JDV had 3 fouls and didn't play a ton in the first half, I mean, he put the 2 exclamation points. He literally did the emoji 2 exclamation points to end the night with those back-to-back dunks. I mean, this game once Kimball just started rolling in transition, I mean, it was hard to see a way back for Houston Booker T.
Yeah, the one thing I want to talk about with Kimball is that they have so much talent. In games before, we've seen them get on runs and then maybe take some bad shot selections. Caden Gray and Jalen Hancock are 2 guys that you just continue to see the maturation from their game. With David Coe out, those 2 have the ball in their hands a little bit more and just kind of made the right decisions. And when Houston Washington tried to go into that zone, obviously Washington's like, let's see if they'll take some bad shots. And all they did was throw it into the middle and throw little backside lobs and like just getting hot. Like that's where Lance Carr was feasting. So just the maturation of that Kimball team to be undeniable with that 71-48 win. I want to get a shout out to them and just the culture that they continue to build over there. And, they're no stranger to the Alamo Dome, and they showed it. So
yeah,
we get some rest that night, and then Saturday, going into Saturday morning with everything you saw, what are you hoping for? What are you thinking going into Saturday's games?
Yeah, just wanted 4 down to the wire games because that's what we got one Thursday night with Hearn with Kennedale and Wheatley, but normally you're getting 2 or 3 a day of these, and on a good year even more. So it felt like I hadn't scratched the itch of like, let's get a really down to the wire, who can execute with the game on the line, who can come up with the winning play. And lo and behold, all 4 games deliver with that, thankfully.
Yeah, for me going in that more, since I saw the the matchups come out, I started to fall in love with more and more individual matchups. So then I'm walking into each game with different storylines. And we start Saturday, not 8 a.m., not 10, 11, but with two of the best defenses in the state, if not the country, with Mansfield Summit and Fort Bend Marshall. Yeah, take us away on that one, and I'll follow up.
Yeah, just you knew uh, it was going to be a dogfight. I mean, points were going to be hard to come by, and somebody was going to have to be special to go off on this one. And basically, Summit jumps out and they get a lead, and this team, like, that's their recipe. They get into a lead and they make you have to earn everything. Coach Pritchett does such a great job with this team defense. They all fly around. And Ian Seda, that was the most impressive defensive performance I saw this weekend. Um, because we're going to talk about a guy from Marshall who really did a great job and really, impressed, but we're not going to talk about is Kevin Sargent, who was so good for them the entire season. He was a big time player in big games against high level competition. And Ian Seda did a great job kind of taking him away from what he wants to do. And when he fouled out, basically, like, hadn't done a ton to impact the game. And that's credit to Ian Seda, because he took that, his length as a defender, his activity, they just couldn't get him going. And that's what the difference in this game was. It was a 7-point game, even with Ian Lowe going crazy. But Ian Seda's defense, that's what won him the MVP vote for me.
Yeah, looking at that, like if you have a 5 or 7 game series between these two, I feel like Kevin Sargent's gonna have a double double in
Oh
four out of the
yeah,
5 or 6 of the 7. So that's even more credit. Caleb Richards started out that game super hot because both teams are locked in defensively. So when you see that first three go in, once again, the thing I'm looking at is who gets into the game first, whose bench and coaching staff and team kind of exhales like, okay, we hit a shot, we're good, let's get into it. And I thought that we knew this was going to be an ugly game, an ugly, it's a sexy ugly game. Like, I love defense, I love playing hard. I keep saying I don't play college basketball if I don't guard. That's just my game. So I love seeing that. But we did predict a lower score than this, so the offense did start to get going. You wonder if Fort Bend Marshall has 3 or 4 more minutes in the fourth quarter after, instead of Ian Lowe fouling out. You wonder, because he started to get on a heater. He started really going. But yeah, Ian Seda, um, unbelievable performance. I mean, we were looking because we were like, hey, do you think he's done enough based off if somebody's just looking at stats to make him MVP? So I'm really glad that he was. And Theo Brannon, um, just one of those guys that took the data of his team and knows that they are so connected as a unit that he doesn't need to put up big numbers. So if somebody's box score looking, you would not know if he had a big game or not. But just getting him into sets, getting him right on defense is just so important for your point guard. And once again, he had a master class of that. So great 11
yeah.
a.m. tip, in a very high level game, because you're just looking at Fort Bend Marshall. If they make 1 or 2 shots in the fourth quarter, they go on a little bit of a run. You wonder how that game actually finishes up. So moving into the 1 p.m. game, my favorite game, and that's low hanging fruit because it ends up going into overtime. But Beaumont Westbrook versus Birdville. Like, this was one of those matchups to where you're looking. I mean, I've said it multiple times. Elijah Garrett's my favorite player in the state of Texas, versus a Birdville team where they don't have the biggest stars, but each of their players on the court are so high level that I had no idea how this was going. Once again, a rocket atmosphere. What were your initial thoughts throughout this game, Lyndon?
Yeah, and for a little bit, it looked like Birdville was letting the game get away from them. Uh, Beaumont Westbrook, they're going up and down, and, like, we're looking around, and there's 2 minutes left in the second quarter. Like, these guys are gassed. They're not used to playing at this tempo, and they're still getting good looks, but maybe the just the pace of the game was affecting them a little bit, because Beaumont Westbrook goes up 9 at halftime. They go on a quick 9-0 run to open the second half, and all of a sudden it's 38-20, and Birdville's got to do something to get back in this game, and they do. And Sawyer Dotson was a huge reason why with his shot making. I mean, this team, we've talked about how talented they are. We've talked about how well they game plan and execute, but they showed some real character. They showed some real grit right here, digging in, say, you know what, we're not going to go out like this. And then they battle back. They make a few shots. All of a sudden, it's 48-46. They're in a dogfight. They take the lead 54-52 in the final 2 minutes, wind up getting this thing to overtime. But the guy we've got to talk about, especially in OT, is Elijah Garrett, your favorite player. Never pick against him again. I hope you admit to everybody on the GASOCAST, hand up, we'll never do it again.
Yeah, I think just once again, his tone, because he got a pick at half court early on in that game, set the tone. That opens up for guys like Dotson to hit big threes, and he was huge. Terry Satcher just makes every play you want a winner to make. But when you start to get in crunch time, and if you see on like ESPN the line chart where it shows probability of wins, that thing goes Westbrook high, then it starts to creep. Sudden Birdville's probability of winning goes up, but then Elijah Garrett will go and make a play, and then I'll give credit to Avery Webb. Avery Webb guarded Elijah Garrett as good as you can. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, his ability to move his feet lateral and make Elijah Garrett have to make a second or third move, which he's capable of doing, was very high level. But getting that game to overtime when Elijah Garrett has the ball in their hand, Birdville fans, after seeing 4 quarters of that, were like, oh, crap, Elijah Garrett to win the game. We don't like this. Birdville gets it to overtime, but then Elijah Garrett just continues to make plays. On the sideline, he jumps like out of bounds to get a steal, and each possession mattered so much there. I know both teams took some time off the clock, but his just ability, and then when it's time to get downhill, make free throws. I'm not picking against you, Elijah Garrett, but you missed some free throws late, but you made so many plays to where they weren't like you got away with them. But just, it was a masterclass of, I always say this, I don't label everybody as dogs. That's low hanging fruit. But Elijah Garrett's a dog. And when you're looking at Beaumont Westbrook, now that they get there, they get that state championship, you have Elijah Garrett coming back. But then you look at this Birdville team. You have a lot coming back on that side too. And these playoff runs, now they're a little more untraditional that we've seen now that they split into 2 ways. But a Birdville team that beat a lot of high-level teams coming into this with El Paso Chapin, Frisco Heritage, they're getting right back to work. And don't be surprised if they end up back at the Alamo Dome.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the end of the Saturday early session. Lyndon gets us. I'm from San Antonio, so I have my specific Mexican food restaurant spots, but we go over to Alamo Cafe. They're throwing tortillas at our face. It's elite. It's elite food there. We turn around, we get back, and this 6A Division II game tipped off like it was like Sunday at a Gasso. 2 0-3 teams. 15 minutes on the warm-up clock, and both teams are like, hey, we're ready to hoop. Refs ready to go. Let's go. Because we walk into the gym at 5:10 in the second quarter starting. So somebody figure that out, UIL.
Yeah.
But we get in there. We look up. Silas Rodriguez has already gotten hot. But, I mean, this game was one of those ones where you're trying to find storylines. And I was just like, you know what? Forget the storylines. I know the players. Let's just see what happens. And it really gave us a high-level game. Don't you agree?
Yeah. And, based off of what we saw from getting there a little bit later, shout out Alamo Cafe. But we saw Jordan like kind of dominate the game for the stretch that we got to see. They closed well in the second quarter, and they start out like on a 9-0 run, just open the third with hitting 3 threes. And it's like, okay, Silas must have really been shooting it well in the first half to get them in this lead. And, just about that time, he starts making shots again, and they were feeding him. And Jordan Lowry did an excellent job just, being able as a creator to get him and kind of know that, kind of have that sense to say, you know what, he's got it going right now. And he did. And, with Katie Jordan, we've talked about them a lot with just how tough they are to beat. They're just so physical. They can switch 1 through 5. Ray and Fadico was amazing on the defensive side of things.
Crazy.
Yeah. And with their guards, with Jaden Holt making some shots, Elijah Black going out there and doing his thing. I mean, this was going to be a dogfight. We knew this was going to be a close game. But 45 seconds left. Geyer gets the ball, and they look like they're waiting for one, but that's not the way it happened.
It was not the way it happened. And credit once again, we watch so much basketball, and like we just did the next gen camp because we want to create relationships and start to follow this journey. And we see so many of these guys develop, and the maturation process on the court is always evident. And Denton Geyer attacks, doesn't get it, but because they attack and don't force something, it ends up with the MVP, Silas Rodriguez, at the top of the key. And my tweet was like, some dudes want the moment, and he does. Um, and like when we let it go, I know you and I were like anytime Silas Rodriguez shoots, you're like, that's probably cash.
You
Um,
just knew it.
you just knew it, and it was just a stone cold dagger. And those are just the moments that a kid like Silas dreams about. Um, and prior to that, I mean, Jaden Holt banks in a three. And like he wanted every part of the moment too. It's just like almost back and forth who gets the last opportunity. But Silas's three right there was one of the loudest shots of the weekend. Great for him. Great for that Denton Geyer program that's had a history of some loaded teams. So good to see them get that one done. Um, but yeah, another kid I want to talk about because I mean we get back from Alec McCaffrey and I'm full and I'm tired and I'm lethargic and I'm just saying whatever. Mason White gets a steal at half court, quick hands, and I'm just like, oh, he's a high level football player. That's why his hands are so good. Could you imagine him getting off the line? Just making any type of reference that he just picked a guy at half court. So I'm just like talking to whoever will listen to me. But yeah, there were so many high level dudes in this game, and when you get to the big boys at 6A, and we're like, and anybody that wants to be like, well, that's Division II. Well, no, they showed that they've had huge seasons all year, both teams, and I'm glad that that game delivered.
Yeah.
So, moving into 6A Division I, and Texas has continuously showed that we're not just football state. So, the Max Preps of the world, the Sports Center Next, the Ball is Life, the Slams, they're all previewing this Duncanville Houston Bel Air game. And whatever you think, you thought maybe it was supposed to be Allen Brennan. So did I. But now you get the two hottest teams in the state on a collision course right now at the peak of high school basketball in Texas. Um, Really quick before we break this down, what were your thoughts on these two teams going into this game? What were you looking for on the matchups?
So the was kind of the same reason why I thought Bel Air had a good chance against Brennan, was that their size and their physicality. They have two dudes out there who are physical bucket getters and seem like they were bred for that. With Shelton Henderson, with LJ Andrews, they're able to just fight tooth and nail and go get you a tough one in late game situations and early game situations. It doesn't matter. They're tough bucket getters. Um, and that's the one thing we sat at Snoop Johnson's Champions Classic back in November and watched Duncanville struggle with Kimball's size and physicality on the inside. So that was one of my keys to the game was, Duncanville's got to find a way to stop that physicality. Their guards are good enough to win a state championship, but they got to find a way to get around LJ and Shelton on the inside. So that was kind of my thoughts going into it to see how Peavy would handle that.
Yeah, and we'll talk specific names, but let's get into that game early on. Um, we were like, okay, Shelton Henderson has a huge 26 and 20 game against Brennan. His name's buzzing more because the casual fan, it's weird. Like, I mean, the casual fan, like they're coming up, which one's the one going to Duke? Asking. Like, and we're on Media Row and people are asking me that. I'm like, that specimen over there. And very quickly, what do we talk about? Shelton Henderson's ability to go transition, and he never just runs over people. There's no charges. It's just they bounce off. And you see right away, Duncanville makes a business decision very quickly, goes coast to coast, gets a layup. So he gets them into the game there. Bug Edwards hits a shot early, the first one. And you're like, okay, Duncanville's been here. They know. But that back and forth, who was the name that stepped up for you on Duncanville very early on to go with Edwards to get them into that game?
Dude, and it's two of them, and it's Cam Smith for showing up in the biggest way that I've seen him show up on the defensive side of things. I mean, his rebounding, his ability to affect shots on the inside, and then continue to be a lob threat. He had one alley oop early to kind of get Duncanville sparked, and then Deuce Hunt comes in the second quarter, has 10 points. I mean, we've talked about how electric of a shot maker he is. But to just kind of be that guy who just a plug in, hey, go get yourself 10 real quick. They lead at halftime because of his shot making.
Yeah, and it was Shelton and LJ Andrews on Bel Air, and they hadn't gotten the most production out of their guards. So you're almost like looking, how is this team still around? And then coming into that second
Hmm.
half, they just continue to just figure it out and get closer and closer. And that's with Bug Edwards hitting big time shots. That's with Cam Smith guarding LJ Andrews about as good as you can. And going back to your Cam Smith point, I was like, if for one night Cam Smith, regardless of what he projects to be in position, he projects to be at the next level, if he just does what it takes for this Duncanville team and what they need, and that's to be not fair to him, but a 6'6" center and rim protector. He played that role flawlessly, was able to wall off, made LJ Andrews, who still had a big game, but could have had an even huge game that might have even propelled them to win. But yeah, I just want to be shouts out to Cam Smith on that. But you watch this game go, and we're asking ourselves, okay, the three ball's not falling for Bel Air. Shelton Henderson's not always looking to shoot threes, but then he starts hitting big shots late. Do you remember that feeling? Because I started to kind of get goosebumps when like even you, like we'll say some things, but like our tone just talking next to each other is like, damn, like that's different. And like we watch so
Yeah.
much basketball, we not everything's different. Not everybody's pro. Like, but when we say it, we feel like we mean it. And like when you kind of leaned over, it's like, oh wow, like that's different. Talk about Shelton Henderson's the refuse to not lose in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, and I mean, like the stat line of 25 and 15 in a state championship game will speak volumes. But for those who watched his performance and how he got those, like he was having to make tough shots, and these were threes off the dribble. This was I'm going to have to beat one guy off the dribble and then extend and finish over a help side or even a third guy showing up and trying to take a charge, which nobody, if you've seen Shelton, nobody should want a part of taking a charge off of this kid. But like him continuing to make shots, and then they kind of figured it out. LJ, especially, his ability to just throw his weight around, and these were drives from the wing to go get a post touch, and then just go finish through contact or get to the free throw line. That's what kept them in this game. Duncanville had plenty of chances to kind of put this one away, but Bel Air just refused to die. There's a late. It was probably a foul on Beckham Black when he's on that drive, but in a game like this, they let them play. They were consistent. I will say that they let them play the entire game. Especially inside, and Bel Air gets a chance down 54-52, gets the ball back with 30 seconds left and a chance to win it.
So before we get to that point, I'll say this because I talked to PV after the game, and I was like, there was a play there when we talk about the maturation process. The offense breaks down a little bit, so does the defense, and Deuce Hunt late in that game has an opportunity to attack. Now there's a guy right there, so he's gonna have to make a one-on-one play. But watching him back out um, and swing it to Beckham Black, who had a on a switch had an easy like ISO one-on-one downhill, ended up making a layup there. Like when you just look at that for a guy like Deuce Hunt, who's one of the most explosive scorers in the class, but you just see because we talk about Duncanville, there's not a shot that they don't like to take. So for them to back out and get that crucial possession, get a bucket out of it when they need it the most, because here comes Bel Air. But yeah, like that was huge. And shout out to Deuce Hunt. I just wanted to just say the maturation, and you're only a sophomore, so just to see that he's going to be playing the point guard with YGC. So like it's like, oh, I love that decision making. But yeah, so we get to the 54-52, and Shelton has his dribble at the top of the key.